The slap echoed through the Beverly Hills mansion like a gunshot. Alicia Thompson, a beautiful, slender black woman, dropped to her knees on the marble floor, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Above her stood Song Mi-ran, platinum blonde hair gleaming, red nails like claws, screaming over a broken gold necklace scattered across the pristine white stone. "You're nothing! People like you exist only to serve people like us!" Another slap. Harder. The kind that leaves more than just a mark on your face. The kind that leaves a scar on your soul. Alicia had been hit before in her jobs as a domestic worker. She always took it. She always survived. Her mother needed medication. Her brother needed books. 6 more months until nursing school graduation. 6 more months until freedom. But she didn't know that someone was watching from the doorway. Park Jin-Woo, Korean Mafia Boss, dragon tattoos coiling up his neck, charcoal Armani suit absorbing the light like a shadow given form. The ghost. The most dangerous man in Los Angeles. Mi-ran's ex-husband. His cold eyes swept the scene. The bleeding maid, the raised hand, the broken jewelry. And something ancient and terrible stirred behind those eyes. Something that remembered what it felt like to be beaten, humiliated, told you were worthless. What he did next, no one saw coming. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The marble floor of the Beverly Hills mansion gleamed like ice under the afternoon sun. Alicia Thompson moved carefully across it, her worn white sneakers making no sound, her hands steady as she polished the glass display case that held Song Mi-ran's most prized possessions. Among them, coiled like a sleeping serpent, lay the gold necklace, thick, heavy, with a jade pendant the size of a thumb hanging from its center like a green eye watching her every move. Alicia had been working in this house for 3 months now. 3 months of keeping her head down, her voice soft, her presence invisible. She needed this job. Her mother, back in their small apartment in Koreatown, depended on the medications Alicia bought with her weekly wages. Her younger brother needed books for school. 6 more months, she told herself every morning. 6 more months and she would finish her nursing degree. 6 more months and she could leave this world of marble floors and cold voices behind. She did not know that Song Mi-ran was watching her from the doorway, her platinum blonde hair catching the light, her red fingernails drumming against the frame with the rhythm of impatience. Mi-ran had just returned from a charity luncheon where she had been seated at the wrong table, the table for donors who gave only $50,000, instead of the $100,000 table where she belonged. The humiliation still burned in her chest like acid. "Be careful with that case," Mi-ran's voice cut through the silence like a whip crack. "Everything inside is worth more than you'll make in your entire pathetic life." Alicia did not look up. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly, continuing her work with the same steady rhythm. She had learned this response in her previous jobs. Agreement, compliance, invisibility. But Mi-ran was in no mood for invisibility today. She stepped into the room, her Jimmy Choo heels clicking against the marble, each step deliberate, predatory. "Did you hear what I said? That necklace alone is worth $500,000. It's an imperial heirloom from my ex-husband's family. Jade from the Chosun dynasty. Do you even know what that means?" Alicia kept her eyes on the glass, her reflection staring back at her. A young black woman with box braids pulled into a high bun, her face careful and neutral. "I understand, ma'am. I'm being very careful." "Careful?" Mi-ran laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "People like you don't understand the meaning of valuable. You clean toilets and wash floors. You have no concept of... The display case was old, its hinges temperamental. As Alicia reached to polish the upper corner, the door swung open with unexpected force. Her hand, moving to catch it, knocked against the velvet tray inside. Time seemed to slow. The gold necklace slithered off its cushion, the heavy chain catching air, the jade pendant swinging like a pendulum. Alicia's fingers grasped at it, but the metal was already falling, tumbling through space, hitting the marble floor with a sound like breaking bones. The clasp shattered. Links scattered across the white stone like golden tears. For one heartbeat, there was only silence. Then Miran screamed, "My gold!" The sound filled the mansion, bouncing off the high ceilings, rattling the crystal chandeliers. Alicia dropped to her knees instantly, her hands reaching for the broken pieces, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack through her chest. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to..." The slap came before she could finish. Miran's palm connected with Alicia's cheek with a force that snapped her head to the side, the red fingernails leaving thin scratches across her dark skin. The pain was immediate, white-hot, spreading like fire from her face down through her neck. "You incompetent fool!" Miran stood over her, trembling with rage, her face twisted into something ugly and ancient. "Do you know what you've done? That's a family heirloom. Imperial jade. $500,000. You'll pay for this. I'll take it from your salary for the next 10 years. You're not worth the dirt on my shoes." Alicia kept her eyes down, tasting blood in her mouth where her teeth had cut her inner cheek. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this woman. She had been hit before. In her first job, cleaning houses in Santa Monica, a woman had thrown a vase at her head because the towels were folded wrong. In her second job, a man had shoved her against a wall for using the front entrance instead of the back. Alicia had learned that people with money sometimes felt entitled to more than just your labor. They felt entitled to your dignity, your safety, your silence. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Miran's voice climbed higher, more shrill. Her hand rose again, poised like a blade ready to strike. Alicia lifted her eyes. She saw Miran's face up close now. The too tight skin from surgeries, the permanently arched eyebrows from Botox, the desperation hiding beneath the rage. This was a woman terrified of losing everything, Alicia realized. Terrified of being seen as anything less than perfect, less than wealthy, less than important. But understanding did not make the second slap hurt any less. Miran's palm connected with the same cheek, harder this time, and Alicia's vision blurred. She fell forward, catching herself with her hands against the cold marble, the broken gold chain pieces cutting into her palm. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth, tiny red drops falling onto the white stone like paint. "You're nothing!" Miran screamed, her voice breaking. "Nothing! Do you hear me? You exist to serve people like me. That's all you're good for. That's all people like you will ever be good for." Alicia's hands trembled against the floor. She wanted to speak, wanted to defend herself, wanted to stand up and walk out and never come back. But she thought of her mother's medication sitting on the kitchen counter, half the bottle already gone. She thought of her brother's report card, straight A's that he had shown her with pride last week. She thought of her nursing textbooks. 6 months of education left. 6 months until freedom. Swallow it. Survive it. Always. Miran raised her hand again, and Alicia closed her eyes, bracing for the third strike that would surely come. The air felt heavy, suffocating. The mansion was so large, so empty. No one would hear. no one would come. No one ever came for people like her. But the blow never landed. Instead, a voice cut through the room. Quiet, calm, colder than winter frost. Miran. Alicia's eyes opened. She turned her head, still on her knees, still tasting blood, and saw him standing in the doorway. Park Jin-Woo, the ex-husband. She had seen him only twice before. Once when he had come to pick up some documents. Once when he had walked through the house checking what belonged to him and what belonged to Miran in the divorce settlement. He had never spoken to her, never looked at her. She was furniture to men like him. Invisible. But he was looking at her now. His eyes moved across the scene with the precision of a surgeon examining a wound. The broken necklace on the floor, the blood on the marble, the red handprint blazing across Alicia's dark cheek. Miran standing over her with hand still raised. Jin-Woo stepped into the room. He wore a charcoal gray Armani suit that seemed to absorb the light around him, making him look like a shadow that had learned to walk. The dragon tattoos on his neck pulsed with each breath, black ink against pale skin. His face remained perfectly neutral, but something in his eyes changed, something ancient and dangerous stirring awake.
What is happening here?
His voice was silk over razor blades, soft enough to sound polite, sharp enough to draw blood. Miran's expression shifted instantly. The rage melted away, replaced by practiced victimhood. Her eyes widened. Her voice climbed into a higher, more fragile register. Jin-Woo, thank God you're here. She gestured dramatically at Alicia, at the broken necklace, at the scattered gold. This maid broke the imperial necklace, the one your family gave me. The only thing I have left from your family, and she destroyed it. She's careless, she's incompetent, Stand up, Jin-Woo said quietly. Miran blinked, confused. What? I said, stand up. His eyes never left her face. Raise your hand again. Let's see what happens. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Alicia felt it from where she knelt on the cold marble, her breath catching in her throat. She had heard stories about Park Jin-Woo, whispered conversations between the security guards who worked the neighborhood, careful words exchanged by the drivers who waited outside while their employers shopped on Rodeo Drive. They called him the Ghost. They said he controlled half of Los Angeles's underground import business. They said he never raised his voice, never showed anger, but men who crossed him simply disappeared. Miran's face went pale beneath her makeup. Her raised hand slowly lowered to her side, trembling. Jin-Woo, you don't understand. This necklace is worth $500,000, he finished for her, his voice still terrifyingly calm. He walked forward with the measured steps of a predator approaching wounded prey. His Italian leather shoes made no sound on the marble. You've said that 3 times now. I heard you from the hallway. He stopped beside the broken necklace, looking down at the scattered gold chain and the jade pendant lying like a severed head among the links. He crouched slowly, his expensive suit creasing at the knees, and picked up the jade between 2 fingers. He studied it for a long moment, turning it in the light, his face unreadable. Then he did something that made Miran gasp aloud. With one smooth, deliberate motion, Park Jin-Woo gripped the jade pendant in his fist and ripped it free from what remained of the gold chain. The metal protested, screeching as it tore, links snapping and scattering across the floor like frightened insects. No! Miran lunged forward, but Jin-Woo's eyes snapped to her and she froze mid-step, one hand outstretched, her face twisted in horror. He stood slowly, holding only the jade pendant now, letting the ruined gold chain fall to the marble in a heap of worthless metal. "This necklace," he said softly, "was never from my family." Miran's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "You bought this at a market stall in Koreatown 3 years ago for $200, Jin-Woo continued, his voice never rising above conversational level, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You told my divorce lawyers it was an imperial heirloom. You committed fraud to inflate the settlement value." The color drained completely from Miran's face, leaving her skin the same white as her Chanel dress. That's not... How did you... Do you think I don't investigate everything that leaves my possession?" He turned the jade over in his fingers, examining it with casual interest. "The receipt is in a file in my office. The vendor remembers you haggling. I have photographs." Alicia watched from the floor, forgotten now, her heart pounding. She should leave. She should stand up and walk out while they were distracted. But her body would not move. She was frozen, witnessing something she knew she was not supposed to see, the kind of private moment between powerful people that ended with consequences for anyone who watched. Jin-Woo pocketed the jade pendant and turned his full attention to his ex-wife. "But let's pretend, Miran. Let's pretend this worthless piece of tourist jade was actually worth $500,000. He took one step closer to her. "Would that give you the right to strike another human being? To make her bleed? To humiliate her?" "She's just a maid!" The words exploded from Miran's mouth before she could stop them, desperation making her stupid. "She's nothing! People like her exist to serve people like us. She broke something expensive and she needed to learn." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. Jin-Woo stood perfectly still for 3 full seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet that Alicia had to strain to hear it. "When I was 8 years old, I cleaned bathrooms in a restaurant in Seoul for $2 a day. The owner beat me when I broke dishes. He said I was worthless. He said people like me, poor, dirty, desperate, existed only to serve people like him." He paused, and something flickered across his face. Something old and painful and never quite healed. "Do you know what I did when I grew up, Miran?" She shook her head, tears starting to stream down her carefully made-up face, ruining her mascara. "I bought his restaurant. I bought the entire block. And I watched him beg me for a job cleaning the same bathrooms." Jin-Woo's eyes were black ice. "He works there still. Every day. And every day he remembers what it feels like to be nothing." He turned away from Miran as if she had ceased to exist, and looked down at Alicia, who was still kneeling on the floor, her cheek swollen, blood drying at the corner of her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and something else, something that looked almost like hope, though she was afraid to name it. "Stand up," Jin-Woo said, and this time his voice was gentle, the way someone might speak to a frightened animal. Alicia's legs shook as she rose. She was taller than she had expected when standing, her eyes almost level with his chin. Up close, she could see the dragon tattoos more clearly, the intricate scales wrapping around his throat, the creature's head disappearing beneath his collar. She could see the thin scar on his jaw, pale against his skin. She could see that his eyes, which had seemed so cold moments ago, held something warmer now when they looked at her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the jade pendant. For a moment, Alicia thought he was going to put it back with the broken chain, evidence to be filed away in some legal proceeding. Instead, he held it out to her, placing it in her trembling palm. Take this. Sell it. Use the money for whatever you need. Alicia stared at the smooth green stone in her hand, warm from his pocket. I can't take this. It's not mine. Even if it's not worth what she said, it's yours now. Jin-Woo interrupted quietly. Consider it compensation for assault and battery, for emotional distress, for having your dignity stripped away in your workplace. He glanced back at Miran, who stood frozen like a statue, tears streaming silently down her face. If you want to press charges against her, I will pay for the best lawyers in Los Angeles. They will make sure you never have to worry about money again. Why are you doing this? Alicia whispered. You don't even know me. Jin-Woo was silent for a long moment. He walked to the window, his back to both women, looking out at the sprawling city below. The mansions climbing the hills, the glittering towers downtown, the invisible masses living in the shadows of all that wealth and power. My mother worked as a maid for 20 years, he said finally, his voice distant, remembering. She cleaned houses for rich families in Seoul who never learned her name. She died on her knees, scrubbing a floor in a house that wasn't hers, alone, while the family she worked for was on vacation in France. He turned back to Alicia, and she saw something raw in his face now, something he usually kept hidden beneath the cold exterior. I was 14. I swore on her grave that day that I would never let anyone treat the invisible people like they were nothing. Never again. Alicia felt tears burning in her eyes, but these were different from the tears of pain. These were tears of recognition, of seeing another human being who understood what it meant to be powerless, to be stepped on, to be told you were worth less than the dirt on someone's shoes. Jin-Woo pulled a business card from his inner jacket pocket and placed it in her other hand, next to the jade. My assistant's number is on this card. If you need a job, references, or if anyone threatens you because of what happened today, you call that number. Understood? Alicia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. He turned to Miran one last time. You are no longer permitted to employ domestic workers. I will personally ensure that every agency in Los Angeles knows you are violent and unstable. He adjusted his cuffs with careful precision. And the penthouse you're living in? I still own the building. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Miran's knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall, her face a mask of devastation and disbelief. You can't do this. You can't ruin me like this. I'm your wife. Ex-wife, he corrected coldly. And I just did. He walked toward the door, then paused at the threshold and looked back at Alicia one final time. When you finish nursing school, Miss Thompson, my organization runs a community clinic in Koreatown. We always need good people. People who understand what it means to suffer. People who will treat the invisible ones like they matter. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The pay is triple what you make here. Think about it. And then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Alicia stood in the center of that marble room, holding a piece of jade and a business card, her face bruised and her heart somehow lighter than it had been in years. She looked at Miran, still crumpled against the wall, and felt not triumph, but something quieter. Understanding that cruelty often comes from fear, and fear comes from knowing, deep down, that you are not as important as you pretend to be. She walked out of that mansion without looking back. 3 months later, she graduated with her nursing degree. 6 months after that, she was working at the clinic in Koreatown, making enough money to move her mother into a better apartment, to send her brother to a good school, to finally breathe without the weight of desperation on her chest. 1 year later, her mother's illness went into remission. And Song Miran? No agency would touch her. The story spread through the networks of domestic workers like wildfire. The woman who beat her maid over fake jewelry, who lost everything because she could not see the humanity in someone she considered beneath her. She ended up cleaning her own apartment, filing her own nails, living off a dwindling settlement that would not last forever. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it wears an expensive suit and dragon tattoos. Sometimes it remembers what it felt like to be invisible and refuses to let history repeat itself. Alicia kept the jade pendant. She never sold it. She kept it on her dresser as a reminder that dignity is not something anyone can take from you. It is something you carry inside, unbreakable, like stone. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by your position instead of your character? Have you witnessed someone abuse their power over those they considered beneath them? Did you ever find protection from the most unexpected source when you needed it most? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about dignity, unexpected justice, and the power of remembering where you came from, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.